The satellite image on Rusty Caldwell's laptop screen showed something that shouldn't have been there. A dark shadow beneath his newly purchased ranch, stretching for miles underground. He had been using the geological survey software to plan irrigation lines, nothing more. But the readings were unmistakable. The formation beneath the Broken Arrow Ranch contained something valuable, something that made his $40,000 purchase look like the steal of a lifetime. Or the biggest mistake he'd ever made. The previous owner had sold fast, too fast. Now Rusty understood why. 3 weeks earlier, Rusty had driven down Highway 87 through the Texas Hill Country, searching for a fresh start after losing his engineering job in Dallas. The recession had hit the construction industry hard, and at 45, he was too old to compete with younger graduates and too proud to move back in with his sister. The Broken Arrow Ranch had appeared in online listings for months, its price dropping every week until it hit rock bottom. The realtor, a nervous man named Dennis Pike, had met him at the rusted gate. Pike kept checking his watch and mentioned 3 times that he had another appointment. The ranch house needed work, Pike admitted, leading Rusty through rooms thick with dust and the smell of neglect. The previous owner, an elderly man named Harold Whitman, had died 6 months ago. His heirs wanted a quick sale, Pike explained. No questions, cash only, as is condition. Rusty walked the property boundaries that first day, noting the good bones beneath the decay. 2,000 acres of decent grazing land, a well that still pumped clear water, and enough space to build whatever life he could afford. The isolation felt like freedom after months of unemployment and mounting debt. He signed the papers that afternoon, using most of his severance package and retirement savings. Now, staring at the satellite data on his computer screen, Rusty realized the land beneath his boots might contain millions of barrels of oil. The geological formation was textbook perfect, exactly the type he'd studied in college before switching to civil engineering. He cross-referenced the coordinates with several mapping services. The shadow appeared on every image, a dark finger pointing toward vast underground reserves. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his phone to call a contact from his engineering days. Nora Fleming had specialized in geological surveys for the petroleum industry before starting her own consulting firm. If anyone could confirm what he was seeing, it was Nora. But before he could dial, headlights swept across his kitchen window. A black SUV was coming up his long driveway, moving fast. Rusty had been living on the ranch for 3 weeks without a single visitor. The nearest neighbor was 12 miles away. He closed the laptop and walked to the front porch, squinting into the darkness. The vehicle's headlights stayed on as it stopped near the house, making it impossible to see who was inside. The engine idled for a long moment before shutting off. 2 figures emerged from the SUV. In the moonlight, Rusty could make out expensive clothes and confident postures. These weren't neighbors coming to welcome him to the area. They moved with the purposeful stride of people who knew exactly what they wanted. And somehow, Rusty had the feeling they wanted something from him. The woman who stepped out of the passenger side wore a tailored business suit that cost more than Rusty's monthly unemployment check had been. Her companion, a thick-set man in a dark jacket, stayed by the vehicle while she approached the porch. Her smile was professional and cold. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Victoria Hartwell from Eagle Petroleum Corporation. I believe we need to talk." Rusty felt his stomach drop. He hadn't told anyone about the satellite images, hadn't even confirmed what he'd seen. Yet here was a petroleum company representative standing on his porch at 9 o'clock at night. Either this was an incredible coincidence, or someone had been watching his computer activity more closely than he'd realized. "It's late for business calls," Rusty said, staying on the porch steps above her. "How did you find me out here?" Victoria's smile never wavered. "We make it our business to know about geological activity in this region. Your recent satellite data requests triggered our monitoring systems. Very sophisticated scanning you've been doing for a rancher." She paused, letting that sink in. "We're prepared to make you a very generous offer for mineral rights to your property." The casual mention of monitoring his online activity sent a chill down Rusty's spine. He'd used legitimate geological survey websites, public databases that any citizen could access. The fact that a corporation was tracking such searches suggested resources and reach far beyond what he'd imagined. "I'm not interested in selling anything," he said carefully. "Just bought this place." "Of course, but mineral rights are separate from surface rights, Mr. Caldwell. It's possible that what you think you own and what you actually own are 2 very different things." Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. These are copies of the original deed transfers for this property. Very interesting reading. She extended the folder toward him, but Rusty made no move to take it. The quiet man by the SUV shifted his weight, drawing attention to his presence. Harold Whitman, the previous owner, sold the subsurface mineral rights to Eagle Petroleum in 2018, Victoria continued. Completely legal transaction, properly filed with the county. The surface land you purchased comes without any claim to what lies beneath it. Rusty's mind raced. The realtor had rushed the sale, insisted on cash only, no financing that would have required a thorough title search. Pike had known. The bastard had known the mineral rights were gone and hadn't disclosed it. That's impossible, Rusty said. A sale like that would have shown up in the property records. Victoria's smile grew sharper. Would it? County filing systems can be complex, especially for elderly property owners who might not fully understand what they're signing. Harold Whitman was 83 years old and dealing with early-stage dementia when he agreed to our terms. The implication hung in the night air between them. An elderly man, confused and alone, signing away rights to millions of dollars worth of oil because he didn't understand what the papers meant. If it was true, it was legal theft. If it was false, it was an elaborate bluff to steal what Rusty had legitimately purchased. I'll need to verify that with my own lawyer, Rusty said. Of course, but I should mention that Eagle Petroleum is prepared to begin extraction operations within 60 days. Heavy machinery, drilling equipment, truck traffic. It might make your ranching plans somewhat difficult. Victoria placed the folder on the porch railing. We're offering $50,000 for a quitclaim deed to remove any potential disputes. Tonight only. She turned and walked back toward the SUV without waiting for an answer. The message was clear. Take the money, or watch his property become worthless. But as the taillights disappeared down his driveway, Rusty realized that Victoria Hartwell had made one crucial mistake. She'd confirmed that there really was oil under his land, and that Eagle Petroleum wanted it badly enough to show up in the middle of the night with threats and cash offers. Rusty spent the entire night poring over the documents Victoria Hartwell had left behind. The mineral rights deed appeared legitimate, complete with Harold Whitman's shaky signature and notary stamps. But something felt wrong about the dates. The contract was signed on March 15, 2018, yet the notary's commission had expired 2 months earlier. Either it was a simple oversight, or someone had forged the paperwork. At dawn, he drove to the county courthouse in Mason, 20 miles south of his ranch. The clerk, an elderly woman named Betty Morrison, pulled the property records from the filing system. The original deed to Harold Whitman showed clear ownership of both surface and mineral rights dating back to 1987. But when Betty searched for any subsequent transfers of mineral rights, the computer system showed no record of a sale to Eagle Petroleum Corporation. Are you sure these papers are from our office? Betty asked, examining the documents Victoria had provided. The formatting looks right, but I don't remember processing any major mineral rights transfers in 2018. Something like that would have been big news around here. Rusty felt a surge of hope mixed with anger. If Eagle Petroleum had fabricated the deed, they were counting on him being too intimidated or financially strapped to challenge them legally. But they'd underestimated him. Years of engineering work had taught him to analyze problems methodically and verify every detail. He called Nora Fleming from the courthouse parking lot. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with surprise at hearing from him after nearly 3 years. Rusty Caldwell. I heard about Dallas Industries laying off half their engineering staff. How are you holding up? Been better. Listen, Nora. I need a geological consultation, and I need it to stay confidential. Can you drive out to Mason County today? That sounds serious. What's going on? Rusty explained about the ranch purchase, the satellite images, and Eagle Petroleum's midnight visit. Nora listened without interrupting, her silence growing more concerned as the story unfolded. Jesus, Rusty. If your readings are accurate, you might be sitting on one of the largest untapped reserves in Texas. But Eagle Petroleum doesn't make house calls for small deposits. They've got geologists and satellite data far more sophisticated than anything you could access online. So they already knew what was under there? Had to. The question is how long they've known and what they've been planning. I can drive down this afternoon with my equipment. We'll do a proper survey and see exactly what you've found. After hanging up, Rusty sat in his truck and stared at the courthouse building. Somewhere in those files was the truth about his property rights. But Eagle Petroleum had resources he couldn't match. Corporate lawyers, political connections, and enough money to drag out legal proceedings until he went bankrupt defending his claim. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Caldwell, we strongly advise you to reconsider our offer. These types of disputes can become very expensive and time-consuming. Some battles aren't worth fighting." Rusty deleted the message and started his truck. He had about 6 hours before Nora arrived to confirm what the satellite data had shown him. 6 hours to decide whether he would fold to corporate pressure or fight for what might be his only chance at financial security. But as he drove back toward the ranch, another black SUV appeared in his rearview mirror, maintaining a steady distance behind him. When he turned onto the county road leading to his property, the vehicle followed. When he slowed down, it slowed down. Eagle Petroleum wasn't just applying legal pressure. They were watching his every move. Nora Fleming arrived at 3 o'clock in a white pickup truck, loaded with geological survey equipment. Rusty had known her for 8 years, since their paths had crossed on a pipeline project near Houston. She was 42, practical, and one of the most thorough geologists he'd ever worked with. If anyone could confirm or debunk what he'd seen in those satellite images, it was Nora. "Show me what you've got," she said, pulling on work boots and grabbing her tablet from the truck cab. Rusty led her to the spot where his laptop analysis had indicated the strongest geological formation. Nora unpacked a portable ground-penetrating radar unit and began taking readings across a grid pattern. The device sent electromagnetic waves deep into the earth, measuring the density and composition of underground layers. "Holy shit," Nora whispered after 20 minutes of scanning. "Rusty, this isn't just oil. This is a massive shale formation with multiple extraction zones. I'm reading petroleum deposits at least 80 feet thick, extending in every direction beyond my equipment's range." She showed him the readouts on her tablet screen. The underground formation appeared as bright white layers on the digital display, indicating dense organic deposits that had been compressed into oil over millions of years. According to her measurements, the reserve stretched beneath not only his 2,000 acres but extended under neighboring properties for miles. "How much are we talking about?" Rusty asked. Nora did quick calculations on her tablet. "Conservative estimate, 50 million barrels. Market value of $4 billion. Maybe more." She looked up at him with a mixture of excitement and concern. "No wonder Eagle Petroleum showed up at your door. This could be one of the largest privately owned oil discoveries in Texas history." The magnitude of the numbers left Rusty speechless. $4 billion worth of oil beneath land he'd bought for $40,000. It seemed impossible, yet the scientific evidence was undeniable. But as Nora packed up her equipment, a disturbing thought occurred to him. If this formation is so large, why hasn't it been discovered before? Geological surveys of this area go back decades. "That's a good question," Nora said. "Either previous surveys missed it somehow, or someone has been keeping this information very quiet. Oil companies don't usually let deposits this size sit undrilled." They walked back toward the house as the sun began to set. Rusty's phone rang, displaying Dennis Pike's number. The realtor's voice sounded nervous and strained. "Rusty, I need to talk to you about your property purchase. There's been some complications with the paperwork. Can you meet me tonight?" "What kind of complications?" "Better discussed in person. I'm at the Longhorn Diner on Highway 87. Can you be here in an hour?" After Pike hung up, Nora shook her head. "I don't like this. First the petroleum company shows up. Now your realtor wants an emergency meeting. Someone's trying to pressure you from multiple angles. Maybe Pike has information about those mineral rights documents. Or maybe he's working with Eagle Petroleum to get you to sign something stupid." Nora loaded the last of her equipment into her truck. "I'm driving back to Austin tonight, but I'll have a full geological report ready by tomorrow morning. Legal documentation that proves what's under your land." As Nora's headlights disappeared down the driveway, Rusty considered his options. Pike might have crucial information about Harold Whitman's dealings with Eagle Petroleum, but meeting him alone, at night, felt like walking into a trap. His phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Some opportunities only come once, Mr. Caldwell. Don't let pride cost you everything." Rusty grabbed his truck keys and headed for town. Whatever Dennis Pike had to tell him, it was time to hear the whole truth about what he'd really purchased when he bought the Broken Arrow Ranch. The Longhorn Diner sat on a lonely stretch of Highway 87, its neon sign flickering against the dark Texas sky. Dennis Pike's sedan was the only vehicle in the gravel parking lot when Rusty arrived at 8 o'clock. Through the windows, he could see the realtor hunched over a cup of coffee in a corner booth, his normally neat appearance disheveled and anxious. Pike looked up as Rusty entered, his face pale under the harsh fluorescent lighting. The waitress, An older woman with tired eyes poured coffee without being asked and retreated to the kitchen, leaving them alone in the empty diner. "Thank you for coming," Pike said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been carrying this guilt for months, and after what happened with Eagle Petroleum showing up at your place, I can't stay quiet anymore." "What guilt, Dennis? What did you do?" Pike reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope, his hands shaking slightly. "Harold Whitman never signed those mineral rights over to Eagle Petroleum. The paperwork they showed you is fake." Rusty felt his pulse quicken. "How do you know that?" "Because I was there when Harold died. He spent his last 6 months in my sister's nursing home in Fredericksburg. Early-stage dementia, just like Victoria Hartwell said. But Harold was lucid enough to know the value of his land. He told me repeatedly that he would never sell the mineral rights. Said they were his legacy for his grandchildren." Pike opened the envelope and spread several documents across the table. "These are photocopies of Harold's real will and estate papers. He left everything to his nephew in Oklahoma, including full mineral rights. The nephew never knew about the oil potential, so when Eagle Petroleum approached him about selling the surface land, he just wanted to get rid of it quickly." "Then how did Eagle Petroleum get involved?" "They've been tracking this area for years. Geological surveys, soil samples, everything they could do without actually drilling. When Harold died and the nephew put the land up for sale, they saw their chance. They couldn't buy it directly, because that would have triggered a full geological assessment that might have revealed the oil deposits publicly." Pike leaned forward, lowering his voice even further. "So they used me. Eagle Petroleum paid me $50,000 to make sure the sale went to someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Someone who needed land cheap and wouldn't hire lawyers or do extensive title searches." The betrayal hit Rusty like a physical blow. He'd trusted Pike, followed his advice, and signed papers without the proper legal protections because the realtor had assured him everything was legitimate. "You set me up," Rusty said, anger rising in his voice. "I thought they just wanted to buy mineral rights from you later at fair market value. I didn't know they were planning to forge documents and claim Harold had already sold them. When they showed up at your ranch with fake paperwork, I realized how deep this goes." Pike pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "This is Harold's nephew's contact information. His name is Robert Whitman. He lives in Tulsa and has no idea what his uncle's land is really worth. If you contact him with proof of the oil deposits, he might be willing to partner with you against Eagle Petroleum." Rusty picked up the card, his mind racing through possibilities. Robert Whitman was the legitimate heir to the mineral rights. If Eagle Petroleum's claim was fraudulent, then those rights still belonged to Harold's family. But proving fraud against a major corporation would require resources and legal expertise far beyond what either he or Robert Whitman could afford. "Why are you telling me this now?" Rusty asked. Pike finished his coffee and stood up. "Because Eagle Petroleum is planning to file paperwork tomorrow claiming adverse possession of your surface rights. They're going to argue that your purchase was invalid because it didn't include proper mineral rights disclosures. They want the whole property, Rusty, not just what's underneath it." Rusty stared at the business card in his hand, processing the magnitude of what Pike had just revealed. Eagle Petroleum wasn't just stealing mineral rights. They were planning to take his entire property through legal maneuvering that would leave him with nothing. "How much time do I have?" Rusty asked. "They're filing the adverse possession claim at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Once that's in the system, you'll be fighting an uphill legal battle that could take years and cost hundreds of thousands in attorney fees." Pike gathered the documents and slid them back into the envelope. "Even if you win eventually, they'll strip mine every barrel of oil out of that ground while the case drags through court. What about you? Won't they come after you for talking to me?" Pike's laugh was bitter and hollow. "I'm already finished in this business. Eagle Petroleum made it clear that if I didn't cooperate fully, they'd destroy my real estate license and make sure I never worked in Texas again. They have that kind of reach." Through the diner window, headlights swept across the parking lot as a black SUV pulled in beside Pike's sedan, the same make and model that had been following Rusty earlier. Victoria Hartwell emerged from the passenger side, her expression cold and determined even in the dim light. "Jesus," Pike whispered, his face going white. "They followed one of us here." Victoria entered the diner with the confidence of someone who owned the place. She walked directly to their booth and slid into the seat next to Pike, effectively trapping him against the window. "Gentlemen, I hope you're having a productive conversation about Mr. Caldwell's future plans. This is a private meeting," Rusty said. "Not when it concerns Eagle Petroleum's lawful business interests." Victoria's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Dennis, I trust you're encouraging Mr. Caldwell to accept our generous settlement offer before tomorrow's filing deadline." Pike kept his eyes fixed on the table, unable to meet either Victoria's gaze or Rusty's. The envelope containing Harold Whitman's real estate documents sat between them like evidence of treason. "Actually," Rusty said, "Dennis was just explaining how your mineral rights claim might not be as solid as you pretended." Victoria's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "I see. And what exactly did Dennis tell you about those rights?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Pike was sweating despite the diner's air conditioning, clearly terrified of both options available to him. If he admitted to revealing Eagle Petroleum's fraud, Victoria would make good on her threats to destroy his career. If he denied it, Rusty would know he couldn't be trusted as an ally. "I told him the truth," Pike said finally, his voice stronger than Rusty had expected. "Harold Whitman never sold those rights to your company. The documents you showed him are forgeries." Victoria's mask of professional courtesy slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. "That's a very serious accusation, Dennis. I hope you have evidence to support such claims." Pike reached for the envelope, but Victoria was faster. Her hand clamped down on his wrist with surprising strength. "Evidence of what exactly? A confused old man's final wishes? The ramblings of someone in the early stages of dementia?" Her grip tightened until Pike winced. Courts rarely give much weight to the testimony of people who aren't around to defend it. Rusty understood the implied threat. Harold Whitman was dead. Pike was compromised. And without concrete proof of forgery, it would be Victoria's word and Eagle Petroleum's resources against his accusations. But as Victoria released Pike's wrist and stood to leave, she made the same mistake she'd made at his ranch. She'd confirmed that Eagle Petroleum's claim was vulnerable enough to require intimidation and threats. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Mr. Caldwell. After that, the generous settlement offer expires permanently." The diner door chimed as she left, but the black SUV remained in the parking lot, its engine running and headlights pointed directly at the windows where they sat. Rusty drove through the night toward Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Dennis Pike's envelope of documents on the passenger seat beside him. He'd called Robert Whitman from the diner parking lot, explaining the situation as quickly as possible. Robert had agreed to meet him at 6 in the morning, 3 hours before Eagle Petroleum's filing deadline. The drive gave Rusty time to think through their options. Even with Robert's cooperation and the evidence Pike had provided, they faced a powerful corporation with unlimited legal resources. But Eagle Petroleum had made one crucial error. By forging Harold Whitman's signature on mineral rights documents, they'd committed fraud that could be proven through handwriting analysis and document authentication. Robert Whitman lived in a modest suburban house in South Tulsa. He was waiting on the front porch when Rusty arrived, a lean man in his 50s with the weathered hands of someone who'd worked construction most of his life. His uncle's death had been the first time he'd inherited anything of value, and he'd been grateful just to get the property sold quickly. "I still can't believe Uncle Harold was sitting on billions of dollars worth of oil," Robert said, examining Nora Fleming's geological report. "He always talked about that land like it was special, but I figured it was just sentimental attachment." Rusty spread Pike's documents across Robert's kitchen table. "According to these papers, your uncle never signed away mineral rights to anyone. Eagle Petroleum fabricated those documents to steal what legally belongs to you." Robert studied the forged signature on Eagle Petroleum's contract, comparing it to authentic samples of his uncle's handwriting from letters and legal documents. "This isn't even close. Uncle Harold had Parkinson's disease in his final years. His handwriting was shaky but distinctive. This signature is too smooth, too controlled. That's evidence we can use in court, but we need to move fast. Eagle Petroleum is filing adverse possession papers in 3 hours." Robert reached for his phone. "I'm calling my attorney. He handled Uncle Harold's estate, so he knows the real paperwork. If we can get an injunction filed before 9 o'clock, we can stop their claim until this gets sorted out properly." While Robert made the call, Rusty contacted Nora Fleming in Austin. She answered groggily, clearly having been awakened by the early morning call. "Nora, I need you to drive to the Mason County Courthouse with your geological report and any documentation that proves the oil discovery timing. We're filing a fraud complaint against Eagle Petroleum this morning." "Jesus, Rusty. Are you sure you want to go to war with these people? They started the war when they tried to steal my property with forged documents. I'm finishing it." Robert hung up his phone with a grim smile. My attorney is meeting us at the courthouse in Mason County at 8:30. He's bringing a forensic document analyst who can testify about the signature forgeries. As they prepared to leave Tulsa, Rusty's phone rang. Victoria Hartwell's number appeared on the screen. "Mr. Caldwell, I hope you've had time to reconsider our offer. You have exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes to accept our settlement before we proceed with legal action." "Actually, Victoria, I have a counteroffer for you. Eagle Petroleum can withdraw their fraudulent claim and walk away, or face federal charges for document forgery and attempted theft of mineral rights worth $4 billion. The silence on the other end of the line lasted nearly 10 seconds. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of professional courtesy. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, Mr. Caldwell. Eagle Petroleum has resources you cannot imagine. We will bury you in legal proceedings until you lose everything you own. Maybe. But first you'll have to explain to federal investigators how Harold Whitman managed to sign documents 2 months after his handwriting became too shaky from Parkinson's disease to hold a pen." Rusty hung up and looked at Robert. "Time to go defend your uncle's legacy." The Mason County Courthouse was already bustling with activity when Rusty and Robert arrived at 8:30 that morning. Robert's attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Michael Torres, was waiting on the steps with a briefcase full of documents and a forensic handwriting expert named Dr. Sarah Chen. Eagle Petroleum's legal team had arrived even earlier. Victoria Hartwell stood near the courthouse entrance with 3 expensive attorneys and a stack of paperwork thick enough to choke a horse. She watched Rusty approach with the cold calculation of a predator sizing up wounded prey. "Mr. Caldwell," she said as he passed. "Last chance to avoid a very public and expensive legal disaster." "Thanks for the advice," Rusty replied. "I'll pass it along to your attorneys when they're looking for new jobs." Inside the courthouse, Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed both sets of documents with the methodical attention of someone who'd seen every type of land dispute Texas had to offer. Dr. Chen presented her analysis of the forged signatures, using magnification equipment to highlight the differences between Harold Whitman's authentic handwriting and the fabricated documents Eagle Petroleum had submitted. "Your Honor," Michael Torres said, "the evidence clearly shows that Eagle Petroleum fabricated mineral rights documents to support a fraudulent claim against my client's inherited property. Mr. Robert Whitman is the legitimate heir to these rights, and Mr. Caldwell is the legitimate owner of the surface land." Eagle Petroleum's lead attorney, an intimidating man in a $3,000 suit, argued that the handwriting analysis was inconclusive and that Harold Whitman's dementia made his final estate planning questionable. But when Dr. Chen presented medical records showing that Harold's Parkinson's disease had progressed to the point where he couldn't write his name 6 months before the supposed document signing, Eagle Petroleum's case collapsed like a house of cards. Judge Morrison issued an immediate injunction blocking Eagle Petroleum's adverse possession claim and ordered a federal investigation into their document forgery. Within 2 hours, FBI agents were escorting Victoria Hartwell out of the courthouse in handcuffs on charges of corporate fraud and conspiracy. 3 months later, Rusty stood on his front porch watching the first oil drilling equipment arrive at the Broken Arrow Ranch. He and Robert had formed a partnership that gave Robert 60% of the mineral rights as Harold Whitman's heir, with Rusty retaining 40% and full ownership of the surface land. Even with the reduced percentage, Rusty's share of the oil revenue would make him financially secure for the rest of his life. Eagle Petroleum had been fined $200 million and barred from operating in Texas for 10 years. Victoria Hartwell was serving 18 months in federal prison, and Dennis Pike had received immunity in exchange for his testimony. Pike had used his settlement money to open a small hardware store in Mason, staying as far away from real estate as possible. Nora Fleming had been hired as the geological consultant for the drilling operation, ensuring that the extraction process followed the most environmentally responsible methods available. The first production estimates confirmed her original assessment: 50 million barrels of recoverable oil with a current market value exceeding $4 billion. As the sun set over the Texas Hill Country, Rusty calculated that his satellite image discovery had transformed a $40,000 investment into a fortune that would change everything. He'd bought a deserted ranch for the price of a new pickup truck and discovered one of the largest privately owned oil reserves in the state. The hidden shadow beneath his land had been real, the geological formation holding more wealth than he'd ever imagined possible. But more than the money, he'd learned something valuable about standing up to corporate bullies who counted on ordinary people being too intimidated or too poor to fight back. Sometimes the biggest risks led to the biggest rewards, especially when you had the courage to see them through to the end. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable story, where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.